Mark chapter 9, and we'll begin looking at verse 17. Context, while you're finding it, is that Jesus has finished up business somewhere else and has come onto the scene. And what he sees is that his disciples are in an argument with the Pharisees again. And so he asks the question in verse 16. He says, "What are you arguing about now?" Pretty much is what he's saying. What is this discussion about? Pharisees say nothing because they dare not say anything to him. There's something about him this time around that causes them not to say anything to him. Further in the text, we find that there's something different about him this time around that causes the people to be amazed that he's there. The scribes and Pharisees say nothing. The disciples say nothing. They're embarrassed for not being able to perform as asked. But this man who has a need, he says this in verse 17, "And one of the multitude answered and said, Master, I have brought unto thee my son, which hath a dumb spirit. And wheresoever he taketh him, he teareth him, and he foameth and gnasheth with the teeth, and pineth away. And I spake unto thy disciples that they should cast him out, and they could not." How unfortunate. When the world is looking for Christ, and they come upon you, and you cannot. How unfortunate for them and for you. How unfortunate for heaven that when asked to work, you cannot. Not out of a willingness, you're willing to do it. Here they are, trying to cast out the devil, but it won't work. This father is disappointed now. And it causes him to have an approach towards Christ that's unhealthy. Here's what happens. Christ in 19 rebukes everyone for not having faith. He says, "Bring the boy to me. Let me take care of this. I shouldn't have to take care of everything, but let me take care of this." If you look in Matthew, don't go there now, but if you look in Matthew 10 verse 1, Christ gathered all his disciples and gave them power to remove demons and to cast them out and to cure men and women and children of diseases, all manner of diseases. They have the power from Christ himself. Just as you have a power in you from Christ himself. And it is a travesty when the world comes to us and does not find within us the power to change. We're advertising it. We're saying we're Christian. But when they come, we're empty against this thing. What is Christ to do? He comes now, and in 20 it says, and they brought him unto him. And when he saw him, the boy now looks at Christ. And through the boy's eyes, the demon inside him sees Christ and goes nuts. And when he saw him, straightway the spirit tear him. And he fell on the ground, wallowed, foaming. And so I see Christ here with all of this hysteria happening. Picture the crowd that's onlooking, and in the circle of the crowd is Christ, the Father, and this boy. And the boy is going crazy as the spirit tears him, and the Father is there, unsure of what to do, unsure if Christ can do anything. And Christ turns to him calmly and says, "How long has this been happening?" He says, "Of a child." Now, he continues, he describes this for Christ in verse 22. And this is where we sit for a while. "And it oftentimes hath cast him into the fire, and into the waters, to destroy him. He says, this demon is not just bent on tormenting my son, Master. It wants to destroy him. There's some things in 2009 that were meant to destroy you. Fires and waters of addiction, lust, appetite, things we read, things we saw that we cannot remove from our mind now. They're not just to torment us, but it is meant to destroy you. Here is this boy, unable to fend for himself, and his loving father, in some type of faithfulness, seeks out the Master. The disciples can't do it. Now the church has not been able to help. What happens when they come through these doors and the church cannot provide what they need? This is where this father is. He says, it's a good thing that you turned around and came. I was about to leave the church. I was about to give up. But now that you're here, Jesus, help me out. But he, unfortunately, misspeaks. Here's what he says. The second part of verse 22. But if thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. He starts out this message to Christ saying, I brought my son to you to be healed. But because of the disappointment, now he says, I'm not sure if you can. If thou canst, have compassion on us. Christ understands the situation this man is in, how wrong he is for thinking in this way, for approaching God in this way, but Christ is merciful. Amen. And Christ turns the tables on him and says, if thou canst. You see, the man is saying, if you canst, Christ. And Christ is saying, no, if thou hast the belief. I have the ability. The question is, do you have the belief that I have the ability? How many times do we find ourselves in this exchange with God? Having this feeling in our heart, nothing is going to change about this. But I'm in church, so let me pray anyway. Convinced that your boss will fire you, but half-heartedly praying to God, if you can't do anything about it, I hope that you do. We have no room in our spiritual life, no room at all for this type of weak-minded prayer to God. Not Christians. Amen. Not Seventh-day Adventist Christians. Not folk who profess to know the living God. It cannot be, if thou canst. Even when the church fails you, it cannot be, if thou canst. Even when your pastor fails you, it dare not be, God, if thou canst. He will quickly turn it on you, if thou canst believe. And he follows it up. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. Upon hearing this man feels much like you now. Identifying with his doubt-filled approach to God,